It's no longer news that the President of the United States fired the Homeland Secretary, Kristi Noem, and I believe it was due to the fact that she's becoming too distracting to the administration activities. There's also an allegation of misappropriation of funds, especially with the $220 million that was used to run an ad campaign that was awarded to a company that was literally set up 7 days or less than a week before the contract was awarded to them. So it's really ridiculous that these are the people that are shouting uh, corruption, corruption against the Somalian community in Minnesota. And this is actually happening on their watch. It is truly disappointing. It is embarrassing.
I think she has been a distraction to the administration. She's been on the news for probably for the wrong reasons. I don't think the administration can afford, that level of, negativity, coupled with everything that is also going on with the administration. Maybe one less trouble, but is regrettable that, somebody in a position to cut cost, because I think that's their whole premise of deportation, that people are feeding off of the system and not putting back into the system. For somebody in that position, and she's engaging in quote unquote fraud, because there is no other way to explain that than calling it fraud as it is. I think we should get comfortable calling it what it is. That was fraudulent. Basically giving a contract of almost $143 million to a company that was formed about 8 days. There is no.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Why and E podcast. Thank you for joining us. If you haven't subscribed, please make sure you hit the subscribe button, like, share, and engage with us in the comment section. It's no longer news that the President of the United States fired the Homeland Secretary, Kristi Noem, and I believe it was due to the fact that she's becoming too distracting to the administration activities. There's also an allegation of misappropriation of funds, especially with the $220 million that was used to run an ad campaign that was awarded to a company that was literally set up 7 days or less than a week before the contract was awarded to them. So it's really ridiculous that these are the people that are shouting uh, corruption, corruption against the Somalian community in Minnesota. And this is actually happening on their watch. It is truly disappointing. It is embarrassing. And I think President Trump made a good call on reassigning her. I don't want to say he fired her. He basically reassigned it to a different position, because if she was truly fired, she would not be having any job at this point. But at least she's still got a job in the administration. Maybe not a high visibility position like the Department of Homeland Security that she was out there. But it is what it is. Hoping to see a lot of people take up this and try to send Doge to the Department of Homeland Security and see if there's any corruption in there and who needs to be held accountable. What do you think?
I think it's a very good thing that she got reassigned to a less visible place in the administration. I think since the incidents in Minnesota, I think she has been a distraction to the administration. She's been on the news for probably for the wrong reasons. I don't think the administration can afford, that level of, negativity, coupled with everything that is also going on with the administration. Maybe one less trouble, but is regrettable that, somebody in a position to cut cost, because I think that's their whole premise of deportation, that people are feeding off of the system and not putting back into the system. for somebody in that position and she's engaging in quote unquote fraud, because there is no other way to explain that than, calling it fraud as it is. I think we should get comfortable calling it what it is. That was fraudulent, basically giving a contract of what, almost $143 million to a company that was formed about 8 days. They don't even have a business address. There is no business, don't have a location. They have no experience. In fact, their report also stated that she was basically having some kind of relationship with her employee, and then I think that contract went through that her quote unquote her boyfriend, and then to that ghost or unknown company. It is ridiculous. And if you come to think about it, there's really no difference between the corruption here in America and the corruption back in Africa vis-a-vis Nigeria. I think the only difference is that the system works. If it is Nigeria, you will probably never hear about this. There will never be a hearing. Nobody will call her to account for anything. They will just sweep it under the carpet. In fact, there was an issue with one woman in Tinubu's administration. I think a better or something like that. She was in charge of humanitarian whatever. About $6 billion got missing, and then she's not able to explain it. And till today, she's been fired, but nobody has questioned her. No EFCC hasn't looked into the case. The National Assembly has not called her for hearing, nothing of such. So other than the fact that the system here works to some extent, there's really no difference between this, a lot of the people here and then the ones in Nigeria. They all after their pockets, they all after their family and friends. And the earlier the people will realize it, the better everybody will be.
Yeah, I agree that it's giving African politician vibes because this is what you would expect for a criminal administration. And it's sad that this is actually happening. I mean, who in their right mind will give a contract to a company that hasn't shown history of doing a good job, hasn't shown the history of performing work on time, and you're awarding them, you're starting them out with over $1 million or $100 million contract. I mean, if you were starting them out with $100,000 contract, you say, yeah, let's give them the chance. They're just starting and they're just getting their feet wet. But a contract worth over $100 million, and you're awarding that contract to a new company. I don't know who in their right mind will sign off on something like that. Obviously, if you're paying for it out of your pocket, you're definitely not going to do that because you want to know that whoever you're awarding the job to is capable of handling the job. But it looks like they're not true. They don't truly care about qualifications. This is the same people that will scream DEI is bad, DEI is bad. But they claim they're focusing on qualifications, but obviously in this situation, don't tell me they focused on any qualifications to award a contract. I think it was an inside job and they did it. I'm sure a lot of people will get paid and they'll be happy. But again, someone needs to be held accountable. I mean, the hearing that they had in Congress is not going to change anything unless the people that awarded the contract are going to be held accountable. I don't think that's going to happen. If it ever happen, I'm sure President Trump will give her a pardon. I think it's good that they brought it out to people's attention, but what's going to happen after this? Who's going to be held accountable? Are they going to pay the money back? Are they going to make sure that the contract like this get awarded or gets beat out to qualified companies and not just new companies that are started up just because of this project? I mean, if you're working for a big organization, they want to see that they're getting competitive pricing for their project. How is the government not getting competitive pricing for their project? Out of all the companies in the US that they could have hired, they ended up hiring a new company for $220 million. And it's ridiculous. But at this point, no one's going to be held accountable because they'll tell you no lives was impacted. But in the issue of Minnesota, a lot of people were shouting fraud, fraud, fraud. And I haven't seen a lot of fraud allegations against Kristi Noem and crew.
And To be very honest with you, it looks like this is the one singular thing that Trump has done that I agree with. I think the New York Times is reporting that one of the reason, or well, the main reason why Trump decided to replace her or to reassign her is because of her answers to the grilling, and she did not do well. She had a very bad outing. She seems not to be aware. The way she was answering questions and she was talking, she seemed she was not in the know. She wasn't aware of some of those things that happened. And then I don't think that is a very good place to be as a leader that is leading one of, well, almost the most populous agency in America. And even if you are not involved with, day-to-day running of some of those things, I think for the simple fact that you have a hearing, I think she should have, brought herself to speed and then, go for information hunting and make sure that she proved to them that she's in charge. It does look like she wasn't in charge. I'm almost certain that that money did not go anywhere. Somebody, within their circle was probably tipped off to go and open that company, and with the hope that that contract, will be awarded to that company. She probably will have something to do with that company if they really want to do into it. And then he's ashamed that in a time that they always say that there's no money for social programs and stuff like that, somebody is embezzling $220 million. And $220 million is a lot of money. In fact, I really want to know what kind of ad, that somebody is running that will cost a $220 million to run ad. That's a lot of money, $220 million. That is easily more than some of the African countries' annual budget. Definitely, there will be some countries that their annual budget is not up to that because they don't make up to that. $220 million just to run an ad, not for an entire year, for probably for 3 months or 6 months. $220 million. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I just hope that their supporters, people that that support them, because I've not really seen Fox News take the story. The Fox News is not reporting. In fact, did not carry her hearing. It's really embarrassing. She had a very bad outing. The next person I will see gone, actually 2 people, will be Pembondi, the AG, and then the Indian guy. Both of them needs to go to M. Kennedy in charge of health and human services. So he probably needs to go to, because a lot of these people well read, they study very well. Like that Kennedy is they say he's a very, very good lawyer, but he has no experience in healthcare. So why is he heading the department if you have no experience in healthcare?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I'm sure they are all aware that Trump is big on loyalty. If you're loyal to him, he'll be loyal to you, and I'm sure that's why he didn't fire her. That's why he actually reassigned her to a different position. I'm sure she was confident in her answers. Is it possible for her to not know that she signed off on a and $20 million contract? Is it possible for her to not know the name of the company that got a contract and the history of the company? I don't think that's normal. If she was covering for somebody, that's understandable, but not knowing, it's embarrassing. And I'm sure she thought that Trump would, have her back. And a lot of people that are working for Trump, they believe Trump would have their back. But when the push comes to shove, Trump might decide to go a different way. Again, Trump still likes her. That's probably why he reassigned her. If he didn't like her, he would have, basically fired her and she would have been out there looking for a different job. So it is what it is. It is politics. And hopefully people that have been shouting fraud, fraud, fraud in Minnesota, they will see this situation and shout fraud whenever they see Kristi Noem.
I don't think he would have gotten to the level of going out to look for a job. She was a governor, so she probably don't need a job again. She's probably doing this maybe to serve or to help out. Probably not for the salary. But I think she contradicted herself when she was answering the question, because she first of all, she said any contract that is more than $100,000, she goes through it, she has to sign off on it. So obviously, because the contract was given out, there's a subcontractor and then there's a main contractor. The main contract was 143 million. The other one was 80 something million dollars. And those two amounts are well over $100,000. So obviously means that she signed off on it. But then again, when they were questioning her, she was like being defensive, like asking, is there a problem with this contract? You know, when they ask her where's the office and where's the location of this company, she says she don't know. In fact, I was surprised that even a lot of Republicans, sided with Democrats to grill her. And it is kind of disappointing. And I don't know if that's her personality, but the way she answered the question, the way she was talking to Congress does not portray confidence. You know, she wasn't really confident in her answers or in her dealings with them. So the bottom line, a lot of these politicians in the West, there is really no big difference between them and the criminals we have in Nigeria. The only difference is that the system, there is some kind of system in place to, to keep them in check, to ask them questions, to hold them accountable. Other than that, almost all of them are the same. There's really no difference. Let us know what you think, and we'll be happy to engage with you in the comment section.